Fantasy football playoffs are here, and with your season on the line, every decision matters. As we dive into Week 15, looking at players trending up or down after their Week 14 performances is crucial. Look at some key players you should buy or sell as we enter the season's final stretch. Fantasy football players to buy in Week 15. RB Zach Charbonnet, Seattle Seahawks. With Kenneth Walker sidelined due to ankle and calf injuries, Charbonnet stepped into the starting role in Week 14 and delivered a monster performance. He rushed for a career-high 134 yards and scored 2 touchdowns, including a 51-yard scamper. If Walker is still out or limited, Charbonnet could be a key contributor in the fantasy playoffs, making him a must-buy. QB Aaron Rodgers, New York Jets. Rodgers showed signs of his old self in Week 14 against Miami. Completing 27 of 39 passes for 339 yards and a touchdown, Rodgers proved he's still capable of producing at a high level. With both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson topping 100 yards, Rodgers has a chance to provide solid QB2 numbers. If he's available in your league, he's worth adding, especially if you're looking for depth at quarterback. RB Sincere McCormick, Las Vegas Raiders. With the Raiders in a rebuilding phase, McCormick has seen an uptick in usage, with Alexander Mattison and Zamir White out of the picture. He averaged 5.2 yards per carry in Week 14, finishing with 78 rushing yards. With the Raiders likely to experiment with McCormick as they evaluate their roster for next season, he's worth a look, especially in deeper leagues or dynasty formats. Khalil Shakir, Buffalo Bills. Shakir has been a reliable target for Josh Allen in recent weeks. With Keon Coleman out, Shakir stepped up in Week 14, catching 4 passes for 100 yards and a touchdown against the Rams. He's had 4 or more receptions in 7 consecutive games, and his chemistry with Allen is growing. If you need a wide receiver to bolster your playoff lineup, Shakir could be a sneaky addition. RB Rachaad White, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In Week 14, White took advantage of an expanded role when Bucky Irving left with a back injury. He totaled 17 carries for 90 yards and added a rushing and receiving touchdown. White's involvement in the running and passing game makes him a valuable asset, especially if Irving is sidelined. His usage could continue to rise, making him a solid buy heading into the fantasy playoffs. Fantasy football players to sell in Week 15. RB De'Von Achane, Miami Dolphins. Achane's performance has been trending downward over the past 3 weeks. After starting the season strong, he's seen his rushing average decrease with each passing game, dipping to just 1.7 yards per carry in Week 14. Despite not facing much competition for the starting job, he has been limited to 32 or fewer yards in the last 3 games. With the Dolphins' backfield crowded, now might be the time to sell before his value decreases further. RB Nick Chubb, Cleveland Browns. Since returning from injury in October, Chubb has struggled to regain his pre-injury form. Averaging just 3.1 yards per carry, he hasn't shown much burst, and Jerome Ford is now getting an increasing share of the workload. While Chubb still has touchdown potential, he's not the elite back he once was, and with Ford's growing role, Chubb's fantasy value is heading in the wrong direction. Consider selling if you find a buyer willing to take on the risk. Calvin Austin, Pittsburgh Steelers. Austin had a chance to step up in Week 14 with George Pickens held out due to a hamstring injury, but he failed to deliver. Despite 4 targets, he managed just 1 catch for 4 yards. With other receivers like Scotty Miller and Mike Williams getting more volume, Austin has yet to capitalize on his opportunity. If you relied on him as a flex option, it might be time to cut ties and look for a more reliable play. Kyle Pitts, Atlanta Falcons. Pitts continues to frustrate fantasy managers. Despite his immense potential, he has been largely ineffective in recent weeks. Over the past 3 games, he's caught just 2 passes for 23 yards on 11 targets. His inconsistency and lack of involvement in the Falcons' offense make him a sell candidate, especially with many other tight end options providing more reliable production. RB Devin Singletary, New York Giants. Singletary's fantasy value has taken a hit with the emergence of rookie RB Tyrone Tracy Jr. Despite a solid start to the season, Singletary was limited to just 2 touches in Week 14. Singletary may struggle to regain a prominent role with the injury bug hitting the Giants' backfield. If you can move him for another asset, it may be time to sell and avoid the risk of further decline. Conclusion: as the fantasy football playoffs approach, strategically strengthening your roster for the final push is essential. Players like Zach Charbonnet, Aaron Rodgers, and Rachaad are trending up and could contribute valuable value to your playoff run. On the other hand, De'Von Achane, Nick Chubb, and others have seen their value diminish and may be worth selling while they still have some market value. Monitor injuries, roles, and matchups to make the most out of your fantasy lineup in Week 15.